Welcome to the State of Ohio. I'm Karen Kassler. This week, Republican House Speaker Jason Stephens unveiled his list of priority bills, including an income tax cut with property tax changes, an affordable housing tax credit, which has not been specified, a ban on trans athletes and girls' sports, and the backpack bill, which would allow all K-12 students in Ohio to get taxpayer-funded vouchers to attend whatever school they want, including private schools. This comes as more than half of House Republicans say they support Representative Derek Merrin as their caucus leader. I sat down with Stephens to talk about all that and more this week. So you released a list of 12 priorities out of the more than 50 bills that got assigned numbers and referred to committees this week. So why these issues, these 12, over any of the others?
Right. It's a very good question. There's dozens of issues that come before us here in the state legislature, but I think being able to have a focus on what we can do to make Ohio a better place. And the theme of our bills are Ohio is our home. And regardless of where we live in Ohio, it's our home. We want our kids to be here, grandkids, our future to be here in Ohio. So we tried to focus on three areas that are extremely important. I represent the area that Jim Rhodes is from, right? And his number one thing was jobs, jobs, jobs. And so our first area is growing the economy. Our second area is protecting the family. And third is educating our community. So that's where the structure for the bills come in. And we put, 4 different bills that talk about different things in each, the economy, family, and the schools and education. So that's the basic structure of it so that people can see where we're going, and the question becomes, how do we get there? And that's the part that makes America great, right, is how do we get there? So those are the points of where we're going to focus our discussion. Yeah.
I want to ask you about a couple of the specific bills here, starting
Sure.
with House Bill 1.
Right.
Obviously a priority if it's House Bill 1.
Correct.
This bill would create a 2 3/4% flat tax and roll back the state's 10% rollback on local property taxes to pay
Correct.
for it. This was a priority that you had said even to reporters a couple weeks ago, that property taxes
Right.
was a big thing you're looking at. The sponsor, Representative Adam Matthews, has said it will cost $1.2 billion to schools, and the Legislative Service Commission estimates it will cost local governments $658 million. Some of those entities are things like cities, counties,
Right.
children's services, libraries, parks, zoos, townships,
Right.
senior centers. Isn't this essentially taking money away from local governments to pay for a state tax cut?
So that's a very good question. I'm a former county auditor, so one of the most complicated things I've ever seen is your property tax bill. Trying to explain how Ohio property tax work. Its calculus is easier than understanding Ohio property taxes. And part of the reason that it is so complex and it's hard to explain makes it very difficult to change, right? So back in the 1983, when the income tax was raised, what happened was the legislature and the governor signed in a rollback to people's property taxes of 10%, which is fine, or whatever the issue was. It was 40 years ago, right? But what that did is that brought those two taxes together, and they have been connected ever since. So essentially in Ohio, we pay income taxes so that we can give ourselves a break on property taxes, which makes it hard to lower either one. So what this bill proposes to do is to take that rollback off, so the GRF stays full and you're able to use that money for an income tax cut. The property tax, by lowering the taxable value from 35% to 31.5%, makes it, gives a property tax reduction for, the taxpayer on some property taxes. So if you've got a bond levy or something like that that's supposed to raise X amount of dollars, it's not going to change the amount of tax due. Where it's going to change specifically is the inside millage, the 10 mills of inside millage, which is usually a school, village, the county. And what happens with that inside millage is because it's inside millage, when property values go up, that inside millage has been going up without a vote of the people for those entities. So the way this will work, hopefully, is that if the property values go up, the inflation factor is in there, then the taxable rate will go, or the taxable rate will go down, therefore keeping the dollar amount as an offset to inflation. Now, the problem is for local governments, those automatic increases that have come over the years with inflating values are going to have to come from either votes of the voter or other ways of dealing with that. So part of the bill also is talking about making those local entities whole this budget cycle, the same way similarly that the legislature did with the Medicaid sales tax a few years ago. Very similar, you put it in, what the taxable value or the taxable value is, what the rates are for each individual. So that's the plan with that, to keep local governments whole as far as not cutting, but at least changing the system. And until we break the property tax away from the income tax, it's going to be very difficult to lower either one. So that's the plan.
This is a lot of money, and you even said it could be votes of the people. So you're talking about local governments potentially having more levies before voters.
Not necessarily. It could, but it's, if a local area wants more fire department service, they vote for a levy. If they want, more sidewalk, it's again that self-determining, factor. I live in the lowest property tax county in the state. We like it that way. We don't vote for levies. Some of my friends, they love to vote for levies, and they have great, but it's a choice.
But wouldn't levies be needed just to keep this funding that you're talking about? I mean, we're talking about $1.9 billion that could be lost.
No, these levies are the ones that would be most affected are going to be the inside millage levies. So that is where you could see some change, but that is going to be determined on every single taxing district, and there's over 4,000 taxing districts in the state, so whether little townships. So
once again, the tax cut appears to benefit wealthier taxpayers. That's going to be a criticism that's already out there. How do you respond to that?
Well, one of the things that we have, and I'll have to check to make sure that it's in the bill. It's a very substantive bill, but one of the things we wanted to try to do in that bill is a couple of other things for the lower income taxpayers. We had a bill that I'd introduced the last two GAs about the homestead exemption being tied to inflation, being indexed to inflation. So as inflation goes up, the dollar amount that's off for the senior citizens and veterans will continue to grow. The other thing that I would like to see us do is right now, and this is getting a little wonky, but this is what we're dealing with. The owner occupancy credit in Ohio is 2.5%. So if you live in the house that you own, you get 2.5% on some of your bills. What I would like to do is take that to a flat dollar amount, because a 2.5% discount on an $80,000 house, tax-wise, is not nearly as much as a 2.5% discount on a $1 million home, correct? Mm-hmm. So if we were able to put it at $125, regardless of the home's value, so that first $125 is for the owner occupancy, it's going to help those who are in a house they've lived in forever, or a new homeowner. So we want to encourage people to live in those homes and stay in those homes. But on the other side of that tax cut is a kind of modifying how we incentivize people to own their own home. So those are a couple of things that I think will be very beneficial for everybody across the spectrum. So.
But wealthier taxpayers would benefit more. On
the income side, yes. But that same person that owns that $1 million home, is only going to get the $125. So but in theory, it should work out. And that's the great thing about these things. We can have I'm sure there'll be a lot of tax attorneys and folks looking at these numbers, and there'll be spreadsheets all over the place in local governments. But that's part of making these a priority. Here's where we want to go. Let's vet these bills. Let's make sense of it, because our taxing system in Ohio is so complex, and it's so difficult to really fundamentally change it until we all understand it better. So
I want to move on to education here. Governor Mike DeWine said his budget would fully fund the Fair School Funding Plan, the Cup-Patterson formula, for the next 2 years of the phase-in, as well as he would expand the Ed Choice voucher program to 400% of the federal poverty level.
Right.
You're going further than that. You've got one of the priority bills to fully fund the school funding plan, but also you want to do the universal voucher program called the Backpack Bill. That's one of your priorities here.
Right.
It goes further than the Ed Choice bill, and I've seen estimates the last time the Backpack Bill was proposed that it could cost $1.2 billion.
Right.
How can the state afford to do both of those things along with all the other things that are out there?
That's a great question, and it kind of goes back to where we finished off with the last question. Is there was a lot of time and effort, on the Fair School Funding Plan, years, frankly, and by having hearings and meetings and this for many, many years on how do we do this. And, it was agreed by the legislature and the governor in the last GA that this is what we're going to do. So we wanted to make sure that we are committed to that as we move forward. However, there are ideas, you talk about the vouchers, the universal vouchers, in the backpack bill. Well, the backpack bill has not had a hearing since introduced. And so my thinking on it is something that fundamental needs to have the hearings. And so, we're going to give that hearing, to the backpack bill. Again, as a former county auditor, my question is where is the money? How does it affect the local property taxpayer? And I think there's a lot of questions that need to be, that I'm sure, and the folks who are advocating for the backpack bill deserve the ability to say, here's the answers and here's where the numbers are. So actually the backpack bill has been referred to primary and secondary. So they've got a lot of time. They got a lot of, I was talking to Chairman Byrd yesterday, and they've got a lot of meetings there in the primary and secondary education committee. But those are the kind of things with these priorities are, here's what we are wanting to talk about, wanting to debate, and it gets back to how do we make Ohio the great state that it is, right? So these are hard issues, they are complicated, and they're not easy fixes on the questions that we're dealing with. So.
House Bill 5 would modernize the adoption process and has bipartisan co-sponsorship.
Yes, absolutely.
The language I've seen makes it appear to be just a placeholder bill.
Correct.
So what can you tell me about the goal of this bill, and specifically, would it clarify that only a husband and wife can adopt a child in Ohio?
That I don't know the answer to that. I haven't seen the language. Representative Ray, who's on our leadership team.
Sharon Ray, yes.
Yes, Sharon Ray is leading that charge, and I think it's Representative Baker. I'm trying to remember but nevertheless, I know that it's an issue that, I think all of us can agree that, we want to increase adoption, make it easier for loving families to bring that together, and we'll have to check the language on that. I'm sure that'll be a discussion point in that bill too. So.
Why bring back the ban on trans athletes in girls' sports? Was this and the backpack bill specifically designed to bring folks from the Merrin coalition on board? Well,
this particular legislation has been passed in 18 states. And it's about protecting girls' sports. Title IX was very important. It changed the goal. I tell you, my former legislator was Clyde Evans. I don't know if you remember Clyde Evans from there in Southern Ohio, and Clyde was just the best, and used to ride his motorcycle all around everywhere. But so Clyde was a big basketball player, and one of the things, he passed away about a year ago. I went to his funeral. One of the things I never realized was he had the 3 daughters, and Clyde Evans was a pioneer in girls' sports in high school. And he went and insisted that they have a girls' basketball team, and his 3 daughters were out there in a set of twins, and the Gallipolis schools became this, and one of those daughters is a judge, Judge Evans. The other one was a NCAA basketball coach and does other things, and just all very, very successful. And the benefits of having, of course, family members and all this, of allowing young girls, women to have their place in sports builds confidence. It builds, amazing skills that we need to encourage. And that bill is going to make sure that those opportunities are still there. And it's an issue that, I'm passionate about, our caucus is, and I think we're going to be able to pass that bill and do it in a way that is not angry, but understanding that we are protecting what's important to us, because we want young girls and women to be successful in all walks of life. It's not like they're going to be, NBA basketball stars, but they might be WNBA basketball stars, but still they're going to be the folks who lead our communities and get us, it's fantastic. So anyway, I'm excited about that bill, as you can tell.
All 32 Democrats are probably not excited about that bill. They all voted for you for Speaker, and they've been infuriated with that bill being proposed before, saying that this is a very few athletes, like one athlete in the state.
Maybe so, but nevertheless, and that's one of the things that we wanted to do with this version of the bill, is make sure that it's legally that the language is very, tight, and we are looking at other states that have been tested in the courts. It's very clear. The state of West Virginia has a similar thing that's been voted on. So we'll get through it, and we'll do it. And if we can pleasantly disagree, that would be the best. But it's the legislature. You have a day. You have days every now and then, right?
Democrats did vote for you, like
Yes.
I said, in a block. They had cited some concerns with the Merrin coalition about education tax cuts, the requirement for 60% voter approval for constitutional amendments. That is not one of your priorities, but that was referred
Right.
in the batch of bills that was referred this week. And yet, you've got a tax cut as House Bill 1. You've got the backpack bill, House Bill 11. The constitutional amendment proposal is House Joint Resolution 1. Were the Democrats deceived when they voted for you?
No, I mean, if you look at, these are priority bills. When they're out of 12, I think there's 5 or 6 that are co-sponsored or joint sponsored by both parties. And this is the thing about the legislature. We can agree on most things. And
even Allison Russo said in her statement that there are things that a lot of things that you
sure,
agree on.
we will agree on those things, and that was part of the reason I wanted to, put that out there, is to remind people, Ohio's our home. I mean, we have, my next door neighbor is a Democrat. That doesn't mean we fight all the time, but nevertheless, we do agree on some things, on a lot of things. We disagree on other things, but we don't have to necessarily be disagreeable. We need to be respectful. We need to try to understand what's going on, and then ultimately we vote on it, right? And then there's the Senate and the governor, so there's a lot of checks and balances to this process. And I think that on a lot of these issues where we agree, it's important to let folks know it's okay to agree on things. Now, on things we disagree on, then we need to have that debate. We need to understand where other people are coming from, but also at the end of the day, we're all Ohioans, and we do have to make the decisions, and that's where we will go forward. So I think it will be good conversation to have with all of our colleagues. So I'm looking forward to it.
There are Democratic co-sponsors on half of your priority bills. Representative Merrin said after your list came out that he essentially wants only Republican co-sponsors on priority bills. He said there are great bills in the pipeline, and the Speaker's trying to make sure the Democrats can get put on them when they're Republican ideas. That doesn't sound like unity. And when you pair that with Allison Russo saying some of this is extremist legislation, how do you unify all of these people in the House and move forward?
Well, and this is, as I've said before, the job of the Speaker is to provide a platform, in my opinion. I have my personal, and what district I represent as far as priorities go, right? But at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, or whatever, the Speaker's best role, or works best, when we put the platform there and we have the arena of ideas. And if that member has a bill and they can convince, 50 other members of the House that it's a great bill, then we pass it, right?
Does it have to be 50 members of the House, or would you bring bills that could not get 50 Republican votes to the floor?
Probably. I mean, it's not in the rules. I think if you've got 48 of one or 30, I don't want to have, the specific math. But if it's a good bill that a majority of the House representatives supports, that's something that we go with. I think this, and I'm the party chairman. I'm a Republican Party chairman. I've been a Republican for a long time, but we have, I have a history of working with both sides. Even my local paper said that, you can't doubt Stevens' conservatism, but we have been able to work across the aisle and find where we agree. I spent 6 years in the minority as a county commissioner. When you're outnumbered 2-1, it's kind of tough. So it's kind of the same thing, but through respect, through understanding and listening, I think that is how we bring the unity in saying, we're going to disagree on this, but let's talk about it. And but we're going to agree on these other things. That still means we can advance conservative ideas, frankly, because I like conservative ideas and I think they work better. But I also want to bring along as many people as we can to convince those that we are right, not just say you're wrong, we're right, and we're going to do it our way. So.
We're almost out of time here, but I want to ask you about the status of the Ohio House Republican Alliance campaign account. You showed reporters a credit card from that account with your name on it.
Right.
But Representative Merrin and Phil Plummer continue to say that they are the chairs of the caucus and ORA and that they control the account. And that could be a big deal because there have been calls from Merrin supporters to punish the Republicans who voted for you with primaries next year.
Right. And, you know, there's a lot of talk and rhetoric in these things. And, you know, my goal is to unify the caucus.
But they say they're going to sue over this. Are you concerned?
No, you know, if that's fine. But what I want us to do is to protect our incumbents, the people who, you know, are representatives in our party. We want to work together to bring that support for all of us. You know, I'm not, you know, vindictive or trying to get somebody who didn't vote for me on the floor. They're Republicans and friends, and I respect their vote. But as the caucus, we want to be able to protect these ideas, you know, like we have the priorities to talk about. That's extremely important because we are able to, as the caucus, set what we discuss and prioritize that.
Are you the chair of the Republican caucus?
Of course.
Because Derek Merrin says he is.
Of course, of course.
You're the chair as the
Yes,
speaker.
yes, absolutely.